All right, everyone, and welcome back to our Realm of Reality, episode number 3. Tonight, we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to talk about our top 3 franchises that really could stand to have a reboot or a revival or a second look brought back, just expanded upon, if you will. And so, with that in mind, I am joined by the Earl of Florida. Earl, how are you doing this evening?
I am doing wonderful. I've got a bag of cats that I need to skin.
Well, just remember, there's more than one way to do that before you get started. Don't get locked into
Exactly.
just one way. All right. So
So
you really do need psychological help, just so you know.
cats are bad, but I can't skin a cat unless I let them out the bag. Dry bar comedy. I watch that. It makes sense to watch it. If not, then I'm just disturbed. Anyway,
Yeah,
today
yeah. You're just making a meowton out of a molehill. That's what you're doing. And yes, you deserve that one. You absolutely do. All right. Before this goes,
is perfect.
thank you, thank you, thank you. Because if I failed to do a good job, it would be a catastrophe. Okay. So we are going to give you our top 3 franchises that need a reboot, a review, a revival, a renewal, if you will. So, Earl, I'm going to give you your first opportunity. What is your number 3 franchise in the top 3 that needs a revival, a renewal, a reboot? Soft or hard, your choice.
Well, I have to say, in this one, it was a book series that was turned into a TV series on Netflix called Altered Carbon.
Oh, interesting. Okay, go ahead.
It's not that old, but the first season starred Joel Kinnaman and James Purefoy with a slew of others. And the
Mhm.
whole story is uh, it's trying to find out who killed the main guy. But the main guy, the one of the protagonists,
Mhm.
he actually hired somebody to find out who killed him.
What?
How do you do this? Because in the future, they have little, let's just call it SD cards, storage cards
Okay.
that is plugged into the spinal cord, and all your memories and everything are there. So if you happen to die, like you car accident, heart attack, whatever, they take that out, slap it into another body, and all your memories, everything that's supposed to be who you are, and you're just in another body. You were
Okay.
re-sleeved into a new body. So the main character is a guerrilla warfare who's kind of fighting against the immortality that this has created, and it's just it's an adult series, but it's a
Mhm.
fun, you know, look on immortality, mortality, what happens when we can't die, how much we try to save the fragility, because if something happened to your stack, that's what they call the little download thing, you're dead for good. And how terrifying that is for somebody who's a couple of 100 years old, who now looks at that as absolutely terrifying, the idea of
Mhm.
real death, of not be back. So it's just it's kind of a cyberpunk feel to it, science fiction, beautifully done, beautifully shot. Joel Kinnaman is awesome, and I love him to death.
Mhm.
And it was good. And season 2, they jumped a little bit, changed cast up, but Anthony Mackie stepped into the role of Takeshi Kovacs, which was Joel Kinnaman's character, just
Mhm.
as a different body. And between the story and the change in the cast, didn't quite capture the audience. But I would love to see a throwback, because I really did enjoy Joel Kinnaman in the first season. Very good. And if you ever catch a time to watch it, you should check it out. It's, again, not for children. It's more adult oriented with some adult themes, obviously. So, but it's a self-enclosed story in season 1. So I would definitely recommend it. I would love to see more, but that's not going to happen. But I would love to see a revival of the series, a continuing. That's what I would like to see. I'm not sure it'll ever happen, but it would be pretty cool.
Interesting, interesting. Well, I'm going to go a little bit in the Wayback Machine. Actually, I'm going to go a long way back in the Wayback Machine. This was a book series, a novel series that was turned into a television property, and it aired on the USA Network. And the what I have selected is Tech War. Now,
Ooh,
for those of you not familiar with Tech War, the basic premise is that they were basically using tech for lack of a better term, as sort of the drug of the day. You would insert the chips, right? And you could get an adrenaline rush or a high. There was VR involved. There were all these different things that you could do. The main protagonist in the show was Walter Bascom, who was played by the always enjoyable William Shatner. It ran for about 2.5 seasons on USA Network before it was canceled. They took a flyer on the series, and was it great? No, but I thought Greg Evigan, as also one of the leads, did a really nice job with it. Spent a lot of time having ways to disguise oneself. They had some, for the time, pretty good visual effects. Long before we've gotten where we are with CGI today, it was pretty good back in the day, actually. And so I would say tech war, because the world in which we live, you have Elon Musk talking about, we're going to put chips in people's heads. We're going to do all these different things. I think now would be a good time to relaunch that series. Maybe, what are we talking about? 20 years ago, 25 years ago, 30 years ago? Why not? Because it does fit in where we are societally. So for me, my number 3 is actually going to be Tech War. So Earl, we had your number 3, which was Altered Carbon. What is your number 2 franchise that needs to be rebooted, revisited, revived?
My number 2 jumps back 21 years. Odyssey 5. I don't know if you ever remember hearing about the show. It went one season, it was canceled. And you've seen, and the thing is, I would love to revisit it, but it's been done so many times since then. The premise is you have a space shuttle crew in space, and they're out there, and Earth gets destroyed. And so an AI, alien AI, has been trying to stop destructions of sentient homeworlds throughout the universe. And the first one made it to it just as it happened. So the AI is able to send the crew back in time, their minds back to their old bodies 5 years previously to try to stop the catastrophe. So the crew gets sent back 5 years. So there's 5 years to stop Earth's destruction. And unfortunately, never made it past season 1. Peter Weller was in it, Christopher Gorham. It was I enjoyed it, but I would love to see this series again, but it's been done so many different times in various ways. So one of which is Travelers, that's on Netflix, is actually pretty good. They send future consciousness back into past bodies who are about to kill themselves or about to die, and they stop them from dying so they can do whatever their job is. So, I mean, it's been done several different times, but you know what? At the time, 20 years ago, I thought it was a very interesting idea, sending people back in time, back into their bodies, because some of them are like in previous marriages they have to work with. One of them went back to high school, because it was 5 years earlier. He was still in high school, so it was an interesting premise back then. But and also Peter Weller, love him, RoboCop forever, which is interesting. Two of my 2 and 3 both are RoboCop stars, Joe Kinnaman and Peter Weller. I didn't realize that till just now.
I see a theme developing here. You're definitely a cyborg type individual. All right, I'm gonna go a little bit, not 30 years back, but about 10 years back. Maybe it's one you've seen, maybe not. There was a series on Fox that only lasted 1 season, and I was a big fan of it. It was a show called Alcatraz.
Ooh, yes.
Now, if you've never seen it, I do understand why, because a lot of people didn't. It was canceled. But basically, it involved paranormal investigations that literally revolved around Alcatraz. And because it only lasted 1 season, things were never fully explained. Why you had people back that had been in Alcatraz, but here they are in current day, living, breathing, which should be absolutely impossible. It ended on a cliffhanger where the investigators were they were T-boned by another vehicle, so the car was rolled several times. We didn't see what happened there. And at the very, very end, the warden reappears at the very last second of that finale of the first season, laying on the floor, same age as he would have been when he was the warden of Alcatraz in the 50s and the 60s. just laughing hysterically. And that's the way it ended. We'll never know what the point was or what the idea. I would like to see that. I don't need to see it revisited from that point. I just need a coherent. Give me a Amazon Prime. Hey Netflix, you got nothing else going on. Give me a 2-season commitment so I can see what the story actually would have been. So that's a little off the beaten path, but that was one that myself and Lady Cephas really, really liked and were greatly disappointed to see go away. So I'm going to give you that one as my number 2. All right, Earl. We've heard your 3. We've heard your 2. Who's your number 1?
Now this one is not too old. It was back in 2011.
Okay.
Now I this series, if it had come out a few years later, it probably would still be on today.
Okay.
And it was on Sci Fi channel. It was called Alphas.
Outstanding. Outstanding call.
Love this series. I mean, it's about people who have obviously evolved to have certain other superpowers. But what a little apart, in my opinion, was specifically the first season with some of the main cast. So one of them had the ability to super strength, but they tried. What set them apart was it wasn't magic or it wasn't blah blah blah. They tried to give some legitimate explanation for how this would be possible. So, like with him, it was like, what about the mothers who the kid, a car rolls onto their kid and they lift it?
Right.
It's something that, your heat, your testosterone, your adrenaline, everything pumps and you do it. But the more you do it, the more stress you put on your heart, blah, blah, blah. He's able to control it. Whereas with a mother, it was one time and one frozen point in time. Right. And then you have some, like one of the characters is able to, I would say, Deadshot maybe. He's able to do the mathematics and hit everything.
Right.
But we know that that's possible because some of these pool players, billiards players, are able to do the mathematics to know what angle to hit what, to ricochet off of what, to make it every time.
Sure.
To me, I look at it and go, okay, if I try to hit a little bit on the right, maybe it won't hit the 8-ball and it'll go. Obviously tactile kinesis or whatever you want to call it is not my thing. But these alphas tried to set apart by trying to look at it, what could possibly be in real life. But they also spend a lot of time delving into the characters, their personality, into interweaving the story. And season 2 stepped it up a little bit with the superpowers. Yes. But it was left on a cliffhanger, and I was like, give me a 2-hour movie just to wrap this up, please. Don't leave that. Don't do that to me. So I would love to get an ending. Again, it's been 12 years, and they've all moved on and various things, right. But I would love to see some kind of closure for this, or continue it to revival, because I absolutely love it.
So Lady Cephas and I were also fans. We're very disappointed it was canceled because we got left with a cliffhanger. What's funny, I know you don't watch Big Bang Theory, but even they referenced this, that they would forever hold it against the producers and the network for canceling the show because they were, the characters were fans of it as well. So I totally see where you're going. All right, I've got my number 1, and I preface this with, this is not drama related. This is simply from an entertainment perspective, what I would like to see, right? We said science fiction, fantasy, something like that. All right. Well, I'm gonna go a little out there because that's where I live. My number 1 franchise that needs to be revived, renewed, or rebooted, but it has to have the same tone as it did in the original incarnation, is Space Ghost Coast to Coast.
Oh.
If you go back and watch Cartoon Network in the mid-90s, that was when it really found itself as a network. Okay. Some of their commercials of the Hanna-Barbera cartoons, some of them we cannot repeat on this telecast, but you could YouTube it, and there's some things you'd be like, oh my gosh, they got away with that. Yes, they did. So, no, because, it was just Cartoon Network. What's wrong with that? Yeah, they had some fun with the DC superhero characters, or Johnny Bravo running into the Scooby Gang, and they were so annoyed by him, they left him tied to a tree, and then went on about their business. I mean, things we're not doing today. But Space Ghost Coast to Coast was a talk show, a late night talk show designed for Cartoon Network, which sounds completely ridiculous because Space Ghost is a 1960s character. And he actually had his enemies there working as part of the show. You had Zorak, who he played the keyboard and also may or may not have been trying to kill Space Ghost at any point and absolutely messed with the show. You had Moltar, who was there as well, who was sort of the engineer as well, who may or may not have been homicidal to Space Ghost, and Zorak as well. I would like to see that rebooted. Basically, what it was is they would do like 5 or 10 minute segments where Space Ghost, the cartoon character, would interview a live action person. And they had a ton of cameos. People did this because it was just fun to do. They had Hulk Hogan on at one time. They had Jennifer Aniston on at one time. They had so many different things, but it was just silly. And the questions were not serious. They were not meant to be. They were meant to be self-deprecating, not to the star, but really to Space Ghost, who was alive in this time frame, but still thought he was in the 60s and still had his wrist lasers that he would fire at people. Sometimes Zorak, in fact, or sometimes at the screen when he would get annoyed with the host or with the guests, he would shoot the screen and kind of singe it, blacken it, if you will. So that's going to be my number one. Space Ghost Coast to Coast. I think we need some more laughs. And I don't mean mean-spirited laughs. I mean just silly laughs of how ridiculous can you be, and just laugh at yourself and just appreciate the humor that's attempted to be there. So that is my number one. So if I got this right, Earl, your top three. Start at number 3.
My top 3 were Alter Carbon.
Not for kids, by the way.
Not for kids. Odyssey 5, very well done. And Alphas still lives on in my heart.
I'm a massive Malik Yoba fan who was in Alphas. I'm trying to remember who he played. I can't think of the first name of this character. I want to say it was Bill. I think Bill was the first name, of the character.
Back and forth with Cartwright as Gary.
Yes, that's right. Because he could do like that, and So I agree with that. I think that was really, really good. And so I went a little bit different direction. I went with my number 3. I went Tech War because I think it's timely. And you know what? And you know what? Throw William Shatner a payday. The brother's 90. Give him a payday. He needs it. Number 2 was what's that?
That was his brainchild too. He came up with the idea, and it was ghostwritten by Ron Guler. But I own those books. I read those books before it became a thing. So I enjoyed the premise and ideas.
Mm-hmm. By the way, like the theme song as well. I'm a big theme song guy. Number 2 was Alcatraz. I am still bitterly disappointed that we didn't get any clarification on what the whole point of the series really was or was going to be. Now I know how the people who watch Lost for 6 seasons feel. And then watch out for the polar bear. And then last but certainly not least is Space Ghost Coast to Coast. Because who doesn't want to see a cartoon character interviewing live people and making a complete idiot of themselves? And the guests, that's right, he's shooting me with his wrist lasers, playing right along with it. And just understanding that, you know what, this is just for something fun to do. Why don't you come spend 5 or 10 minutes doing this? And I enjoyed it, and I would love to see fresh episodes of it again. So those are my top 3. You've heard the Earl's top 3. Maybe you agree with some of our choices. Maybe you don't, and that's perfectly cool. So do us a favor. Hit that like button. Hit the subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you're notified when we have content like this in our realm of reality. And leave us a comment. Tell us, who are your top 3 franchises that need to be rebooted or they need to be revived, such as what they've done with Night Court recently, where they just kind of carried on the franchise. 5 episodes in, has already been renewed for a 2nd season. So there's a fan base there for it. So what do you want? What do you think? We'd love to hear from you. Again, we're going to get ready to turn this off, but we appreciate you listening. We appreciate you interacting with us at every opportunity. So for the Earl of Florida, I am the Lord Cephas. We are going to let you go. We're going to step aside. Good night, everybody.